Hi, this is Chris from Clever Unicorn Games and the Unicorn Collective, back with another one of our interviews. Today I have the eponymous Bez from stuffbybez. How are you doing today, Bez?
Very well, thank you, and I hope you are as well.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty good day so far. And even though the weather's a little bit overcast over here, I don't know what it's like.
It's getting fairly chilly down here in London, up here in London, depending on where you are in the world. But it's lovely to be chatting with you. I mean, this is what gives me energy. This is why I do the daily streams. But yes, thank you for having me on.
No problem. So let's start off. What is it that you like to do when you're not playing or designing board games? What do you do with your spare time?
Well, my answer to this would have been very different 3 months ago or so. Like, in times of pre-isolation, I enjoyed dancing, and I enjoyed cycling quite a bit as a means of transport. The truth is that I find I do enjoy the act of cycling, but I haven't done that much cycling since we went into lockdown. I've been starting to have little walks, specifically around 8 p.m., because that's around the time when you have the dusk settling and you start to see, it getting dark and you enjoy some pretty clouds. It's a lovely thing to do. And also I enjoy putting on some headphones, listening to some podcasts. There's a lot of board game podcasts out there, and I must admit, my life does a lot of the time revolve around games. I obviously enjoy playing them and making them, but I enjoy listening to them, about them, and having a bit of a walk, or even sometimes when I'm curled up in bed, having a bit of me time, either watching a film or this is the ultimate combo listening podcasts on double speed in your headphones, mindless phone game in your hands.
A bit of Candy Crush or something similar going on.
Yeah, I've been doing some sorts of Archero game recently, which is like you go around, you shoot people, you level up, and then you die. It's like a what those roguelikes kind of vaguely, but then as you progress, it's not quite a roguelike because you ascend and then you gain better stats for each time. So if you keep spending money or spending time, either or, of course they would rather you spend money, then you're going to beat everything.
What would you say is your favorite, number one favorite board game to play?
Oh my goodness, this is such a hard question, isn't it? And I don't think I can pick just one. I'm going to give two games. One that I absolutely adored, and yeah, it very much informs me as a designer. The other one that if someone asks me, I will just. The second one, actually, I'll just say go. It's the two-player abstract strategy game. It's got simple rules. It's got so much emergent complexity. It's got the ability for you to feel like you're somehow communicating with people from thousands of years ago, like you're following in their footsteps a little bit, because the only thing that has changed is economy, which means the difference in score. If you're playing a tournament level match between white and black, there has to be a certain number of points given to the white player to make up for the fact that they're going second. Now, exactly what that number is has changed, but fundamentally the game has stayed the same, and you feel like you're in touch. But the thing that I absolutely adored more than anything else is the handicap system. The fact that this is ingrained into the ethos of the game. So it's a case of, hey, we're going to play. I'm going to start you off with 9 stones already on the board. And I'm probably still going to beat you, but this is like a learning game. And people will encourage the act of, if you're about to make a terrible move, they might say, oh, are you sure? Because that's the way that Go clubs are. And it's about this whole attitude of, yes, it's a competitive game, but we're playing it with a cooperative spirit, if you know what I mean. And I adored that about the game. The other thing I want to give a shout out to is Jungle Speed, which is a great game made by Tom Varshaw in the past few decades. And Tom was a lovely person, and I actually got the luxury of meeting them in Festival de Cannes, um, Festival International de Jeux, 2 years ago when I first went, which was awesome. And then, but I love this game. It's like Snap, but psychotic because sometimes the patterns are really similar to one another, but they're intentionally different when you look at them for more than a couple of seconds. So you've got to grab the totem, which is how you show that it's a snap, but you've got to grab it whilst making doubly sure that it's not just similar but different. And so that's the key bit. But once you get to a high enough skill level, once you played it, maybe I would say 150 times, you start to get a bit tired of it because by that point I was beating everyone else too much, and people who were on the same level as me, forced to compete in any meaningful way. It was just got to yeah, vicious and physical for my liking.
What kind of games, and that might be one of them, but kind of games and or genres inspire you to make games?
I would say everything. I mean, the reason I talked about Jungle Speed is absolutely because it reflects who I am. And it reflects the joy of, people very much competing and interacting, but having a joyful time. And I get inspired by yeah, there is an element of seeing something and thinking, oh, maybe I could do something in this space, and then just being inspired by all the games that are out there. But really, we need to go back to Puerto Rico, to Lost Cities, the games that made me realize, wow, games can be more than chess and Go and all these games that have been around for thousands of years, and terrible games like Defenders, like not the video game, that's actually a decent game, but the board game, not Cashin from the video game, and not the modern one, the one from the 80s, which was actually really bad. Anyways, like there's all these games like Trivial Pursuit, Monopoly, Risk. I had fun with them. Who didn't? I mean, these are games that can facilitate good times, but then seeing, oh my god, games are amazing. They can do so much more. I want to do something like this.
I think we're
Eh,
kind of losing some of the older games with all of these new fancy, great looking, but market encompassing games coming out now. I think sometimes we're losing some of the older games that might not have all of this new great artwork and miniatures and things. I think people are starting, especially new gamers coming into it, don't really know about them, and some of the older games are forgetting about them as all these shiny new products come out.
I mean, there are old games that I would say if in 70 years' time Monopoly is just not known by anyone, I would say that that's going to be a better thing for the world, frankly. Because I would suggest that people, I'm not saying Monopoly, you're a bad person for liking Monopoly or that for liking Trivial Pursuit, but there are serious problems with those games. And I think that there are better versions of those. And frankly, if people were playing slightly better games, then they would be having even better times with their friends and family, which is ultimately what it's all about, facilitating those good times. And it's like kind of taking anything around us, not just games, but also being inspired by dance, by nature, by inequality, by just the notion of, hey, doing a sit up whilst you've got one finger touching your nose is kind of funny, and being inspired by literally anything. So, I mean, Reiner Knizia's got this whole thing of, oh, if you play games, then you're going to be making derivative stuff. But there's a whole argument that Reiner Knizia is going the other way and making stuff that's derivative of Reiner Knizia from a decade ago, which is arguably unfair. But um, there is a very interesting truth that A, you do need new input, but B, that input could come from board games and you put it through your own filter, or even better, you could be looking at the world around you and everything, because there's a whole wide world of stories, of media, of life experiences that can be encapsulated within a game.
Brilliant answer. That was brilliant. When you start with a game, so you've got a game in your head. I mean, the first, obviously, getting a prototype and putting it down is the first thing. But where do you start, mechanical theme wise? What is it that you start with when you come up with a new game? Or even what is
Uh,
it that you have? What is it that makes you come up with that new game?
Ultimately, it's once you've got the prototype down, it's kind of about being open and honest with yourself and everyone around the table. So let's say I firstly, on Saturday, I think I brainstormed a new game as an example. So I did it live and had some things. It was like sudden death, some other constant movement, and someone suggested, "Hey, what if you make it based on the L deck which you've got?" I tried to make a game, and then and it was all right. Someone in the comments suggested, "Hey, what if you are actually trying to write the word death?" And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's something to aim for. Then that made me more excited. I was enjoying playing it, but I was like, oh, this game is potentially going to be unsolvable unless I have so much marketplaces. And then later that day, I gave it a few more goes, and it was interesting. But then I realized, hey, wait a minute. Sometimes it's just going to be trivial because the cards come up in the perfect order. Let's say the first five cards included DEATH, and then there's no kind of card manipulation, so you want to get them in a different order. And now from that process, I'm thinking, well, clearly this is a terrible game. So it's a terrible solo game, but is there something there? Like there's something interesting of maybe using some of the cards. So what's if you were trying to make, I don't know, the word life? And because that's only four letters, that's honestly the main reason. And then it was a two-player game, so had your own cards and you had an entire deck of cards, and you were trying to mess up the other person. Maybe that would be interesting. But being honest is the key thing. Being honest about, is there any fun here? Is this a fun aspect? And not being so worried that, oh, I've spent so many years working on this, or oh, I really wanted this to be good, or oh, other people really enjoyed it, so it must be good. I mean, no, that's not the case at all. Um, yeah, if other people are enjoying a game you played, it might be because they just like you because they enjoy being with you or they enjoy being with each other. It might be because they're, they're just being generous and whatever.
No, you touched on something very important there, and that is playing your game and playtesting with friends might be fun because you're playtesting with friends. That is a big issue I think a lot of people have by having small pools
Mm.
of playtesters. And the fact, especially, and this is one thing about Tabletop Simulator, which has become more prevalent in the last since lockdown, being able to get that game and take it to people that you don't know who aren't your friends, you're going to probably get better feedback. In fact, I'd say definitely get better feedback from those people that aren't your friends a lot of the time, because friends generally don't want to, give you bad news. So it's best if you can get it played with people that, aren't in your close circle.
Kind of agree with what you're saying that there is going to be more honesty potentially there, especially because there's such a bigger pool of people to draw on. And I'm actually getting some games into, well, one game is going into Tabletop Simulator and might be able to talk about it later. But so the thing that you're really missing with Tabletop Simulator is body language. You don't get to see are people feeling focused? Are people feeling frustrated? For a party game, are people laughing? Are people, energized? And that's something that you really miss. And so I would almost hypothesize that the ideal way to test a game is yes, with strangers, either in if you're in a massive company like Hasbro or Funko or something like that, you've got like the one-way mirrors with people who come in who don't know who's looking at them. That's like a brilliant way. But for us people who don't quite have those resources, but maybe you've got the resources to set up a stand at a convention, um, being able to watch people go through the first, 5-10 minutes, or even at the Playtest UK slot at UK Games Expo or something like that, that's massive because those people aren't invested in you, but you can see them perfectly. And going around the country for the variety of seeing people, so you don't get to say, yeah, all these designers in London love my game, but let's be honest, I've been playtesting with these designers for so many years at this point that we are starting to consider each other's friends, and we are able to hopefully be brutally honest with each other, but there is still you know
No, I get it. So you have taken quite a few games now, and you've started selling them. I think a lot of them you've self-published and then sold at shows. Is that
yeah,
correct?
correct.
What hurdles or during that process have you hit and you've almost been put off and then overcome them, and how did you overcome them?
um I would say that the main hurdle for self-publishing is, well, there's a bunch of hurdles. Doing the work and making sure that the game is good enough. That's a thing that I felt, I really enjoyed that process. Great, no problem. making the art, okay, I enjoy it, but then actually raising the capital and marketing, that's a serious hurdle. I'm not very good at it, so I'm just going to admit that. And for my first game, In a Bind, that was something where it's funded only because I've got lots of Facebook friends that I got to know through, social events, through dancing, through life or whatever. And then at a certain point, uh, 50 of them on the last day were like, oh, hey, Bez has this thing, and Bez is reaching out to everyone. And on the last day, I was like, hey, this doesn't look like it's going to fund. So I private messaged people one by one in the morning saying, please, if you think it's good and worth your money, please fund. If you don't, and getting capital, that is a serious problem as a self-publisher, getting organized and then actually having the discipline to get it finished, getting all the arts done, and remembering, hey, you've got to do this within a finite amount of time. You can't just take the entire rest of your life. You've got to put down a deadline and you've got to actually get this done. And so that is the main hurdle, I think. And combining that with the potential for anxiety, for depression, and then you just kind of at some point have to be kind to yourself. And I would say the best way to get over it is to remember that it's okay for things to be imperfect, and nothing is perfect outside of a mathematical construct. And if you're going via publishing, via pitching something to someone else, I will admit that for me, I find it more difficult to do the sales sheet, to do a video. So I kind of focus on what can I do. I mean, maybe for you, doing the sales sheets is the easier way to do things. Maybe you're like me and you want to go to a convention and then meet up with publishers in person. And meeting up with publishers in person, that's something you do probably have to travel for, to a big place. Like if we're in UK, the only place that's good enough to be worth going to as a pitching device is UK Games Expo. But really, you should then be considering Nuremberg Toy Festival, Toy Fair, going there and checking out the companies. London Toy Fair, yeah, indeed. And I had the privilege of going to Cannes Festival International de Jeux, where there's a bunch of mass market companies doing quite well for themselves. And I do get to see a couple of people. And yeah, so focus on what you can do and try to remember that nothing has to be perfect.
Brilliant. Have you ever played a game that you, and you don't have to name it, that you didn't like, and there was mechanics or theme in there that really just put you off? And what was that mechanical theme that made you take a step back and go, nah, this isn't for me?
Mm, well, yes. And okay, so this is basically asking what mechanics or themes do I absolutely detest. And I've got a big issue, a massive issue with games that have two variable kinds of focus or a playtime or whatever. I've got a massive issue, to be honest. I mean, I talked about it yesterday with The Last Straw. I am going to name names. That's a nice, simple game. You've got a camel, you put straws on the camel's back, literally, but at some points, maybe you run out of your straws and then you win. But then it's only maybe, because maybe when you knock off the straws, you get the straws. And then when the other person knocks off straws, they get straws. And then it keeps on going because maybe everyone's equally matched. And maybe no one's got enough skill to actually get all the straws onto the camel's back. And then the game will last forever. And that's infuriating. And that's like, why the point? Why the bacon am I even doing this? And so we look at that, and there are ways to improve this. Like Animal Upon Animal has the extension where the game is going to end eventually, and I would say that that sort of thing, where for me, if a game outstays its welcome, I would just rather have a game that's half as long and we potentially choose to play twice. When I play games with McCall and Chris, I think that normally play a game 2 or 3 times in a single sitting. Whether it's Pandemic Legacy, if it's good enough, we are going to play it twice, or whether and it's a rare exception that we say, yeah, we enjoy that. I think the only games we've not played twice in a row are those that we've just not enjoyed. And so there's real value, and designers would do well to acknowledge that people can easily extend the lifespan of a game, and having it too long is far worse than having it too short. And I am personally also the other thing I talked about, having too much of a variance in game focus. Like if your game is strategic, great, make it strategic. If your game is about skipping turns and chaos and take that, great, make it about that. But you better make it short. But if your game is about strategy, but then sometimes there's like this one card in the deck that makes it totally chaotic, then what the bacon is all that about?
Oh man, what the bacon? I've never heard that saying before, and that's brilliant.
That is from On Board Games. He coined the phrase because I don't know how you feel about swear words on this show.
Oh right, well, it's mostly for mature people, so I don't think anybody slipped one in yet, but I don't think I'd be too fussed if they did.
Okay, fair enough.
Um, why is it that you make games? What is it that drives you to make games?
Uh, Arrogance? Wanting my name on boxes? Wanting people to know me? And that's wanting to be responsible for other people's fun. I mean, clearly there's an element of wanting to be nice to people, but there is an element of self-serving there. It's not enough for me to say, oh yeah, there's that amazing game out there. I would prefer to be the one who actually made it myself. Do you know what I mean? And
100%. That's the same, but kind of the same reason I do. I like the idea that my name's on games out there in people's houses, and that my legacy goes on because a little card game that I made is sitting on somebody's game shelf, and even after I'm gone, somebody will pick it up and see my name.
ultimate joy, isn't it? And honestly, I made In a Bind and sold it as Yogi for the money. And that's a perfectly legitimate reason to make a game. I know people say, oh, don't make games for the money. But I made a game literally for the money. My incentive was, okay, what game is going to be mass market friendly? What game could potentially sell tens or hundreds of thousands of copies? And let's think of a simple game that's not too complicated. It doesn't need to be totally different, but it's got to be similar, but there has to be one or two twists. And I did make a game with like a couple of twists that I don't believe have been seen anywhere else. But fundamentally, you could see the game and say, oh, yeah, it's very much, very, very similar to these 10 other games. But sometimes, as a mass market consumer, that's what you want.
People
But
like
I believe
familiarity, don't they? People like.
exactly. And there's an argument to be said that if there is a real twist, people want it to be in a really simple way. Because maybe if Dominion hadn't been the first deck builder, let's say it had been one of the more evolved ones, maybe Thunderstone or whatever, maybe Thunderstone might not have done quite as well because it might have been, whoa, this is too much. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, the point, even though the example might not be exactly true, the point stands. And my point is that, yes, there is value in iteration. There's value in small tweaks and small changes in form. And I believe that with this small game that I made before Festival International de Jeu that two companies were looking at and asked for their own copies of, and they were starting internal testing and testing a lot with kids before all this went off. Um, so yeah, that will probably be delayed by quite a bit realistically. Um, but anyway, I believe that that would facilitate fun down the road. So it's a massive but kind of combination of things. And Eric Lang talks about, okay, you can be a rock star, you want to be known, or you can be a business person, like you want to make stuff for the money, or you can be like an artist and you want to say, this is me in the world. And there's a combination of all of that for everyone. And I think that each project varies. I mean, look at the L deck. I'm not planning to make money from that. I'm basically committing that if that turns into a proper profit making enterprise, this is going to be basically a zero profits company, like where I'm putting all the money back into, getting it to reach as many schools and people as possible, generating potentially down the line, getting a program for more people to make games for the deck. It's kind of a mixture of artistic intent with the concept of a game system and trying to be nice to people. And partially it is with something else like Seize the Power, a game about discrimination, negotiation. It's about, okay, I want to have this vision in the world. And another game, it's like, okay, I just want to have people laugh, and every game is different.
Speaking of Caesar Power, I believe you're working on that right now. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So that is, yeah, a thing that I hope that you'll be able to hold this until the official announcement has been made. So I am technically telling just you, you know, but it's been signed by Inside the Box, and it's a game that I've been working on with Tiz. As I say, you are all playing different aliens. The aliens have different number of eye stalks or arms, and clearly 8 eyes is better than 2. I mean, who the hell would get through life with only 2 eyes, for goodness sake? Or who would want only 2 arms? I mean, if you are 2 arms, you just don't deserve to go to school. And if you've got like, if you've got some more eyes, then you might get, a little bit of handouts from the government because, people with more eyes deserve more money, let's be honest. And this game, it's all about these rules. The rules say things literally like people with um, less than 5 eyes need to pay double for food, something like that. Because they're just, it's not that they don't deserve food, it's just that, maybe you don't want to sell them food as much. And it's not meant to be a one-to-one simulation of discrimination or anything like that in the real world. But it is meant to be a game where Am has all the eyes and all the arms and starts with more money, and all the rules in the game are going to benefit Am. And then everyone buys all these rules. You kind of have a vote, but clearly Am has more potential to buy the rules. And I have won as Finnemore, like they're in alphabetical order, so Finnemore is like the worst character. But to win as Finnemore, you've got to negotiate with your players a bit more, and you've got to gang up on the people at the top, and you've got to seize the power. And so it's kind of that I guess we're trying to encourage people to a be aware of the massive gulf in earnings, and based on anything. I mean, yeah, obviously the number of eyes or arms doesn't apply in real life, but it might be based on your color or your ethnicity or your gender or whatever, or and also potentially in certain countries your beliefs or your religion. And there are all sorts of things that might happen. And I think that there is the potential for revolution. Now, I'm not going to say, revolution comes with its own sorts of costs, but I do want people to believe that it is possible. I mean, it's not a case of, oh, if you work hard enough, everyone will achieve the same. Because at the same time, the thing that the downtrodden have going for them is that they are in the masses. And only by working together can we effect real change. And so, yeah, that's a game that Insight Tiz, Creel, and I have been working on for um, about a year, and inside the box, and there was another company that I showed it to, and then the other company said, oh my god, I played this and it was fascinating because I was expecting to have a good time, but I played this and I was really miserable, and every time I was feeling, and they said, oh, this is brilliant, like it encapsulates it perfectly.
Yeah,
But we went with Inside the Box partially because they are local and we are going to have a really close working relationship with them, and also because we could see that they really shared a vision. And we've got a lot of respect for Statecraft, which they've done, and they've got a little bit of experience with this sort of theme with Newspeak or whatever. And so, really excited to be working with them.
what is one piece of advice you would give to a new designer as they've got this idea in their head and they want to then make this game? What would be the advice you would give to them?
Well, firstly, as I said before, be honest with yourself. If you've got a game that you think, yeah, this is maybe not that much fun, um, it's probably not. I mean, feel free to try it once, but be honest, like be willing to accept failures. The other thing I would say is get it prototypes as quickly as you can, but more than that, be aware of simple little tricks. For example, if you want to have letters on cards, they don't need to look good. Just draw a couple of letters on some cards. If you want to have, yeah, just buy some blank paper or cut it into 16ths or buy some cards. You can buy 1,000 for 10 quid pretty much. And if you're making a card game, you don't need to make all the cards. If the deck's going to be like maybe 55, 100, however many cards you need, you only need enough cards for like a couple of turns. Because then by the end of a couple of turns, you'll be able to see, oh, is this actually interesting? Would you like to keep playing? Is there something interesting going on here? You definitely don't need to, like, if you've got a party game and you might go through like 10 cards in a game, yeah, there's value in pondering, well, would I actually even be able to make 200 cards for the type of content that this game might need? But before you even start worrying about that, just do those 10 cards or 5 cards or whatever and try them out and see, is this fun? Is it making people laugh? And follow that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to me today, Bez. This has been brilliant.
It's been lovely. I'm very honored. Thank you very much for having me. And to everyone who's out there, like, yeah, stay safe and yeah, stay strong and stay sane.